Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, the public arrest of the North Korean leader's once powerful uncle on charges of faction building could herald the mass purge of thousands of officials in the coming weeks. The state-run monopoly of Korea's railway service approves a plan to set up an affiliate to run a second high-speed train service, despite an indefinite strike called by union workers who oppose the plan. Plus, in the face of weeks-long protests against the government's plan to abandon a trade deal with the European Union, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovich proposes talks with the opposition. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Following North Korea's release of pictures of leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Jang Song-thaek being dragged from his chair and disgraced in front of his peers, there's growing speculation a mass purge could be around the corner.
Experts say up to 10,000 people could be at risk. Our Hwang Sang-hee has the details.
The Jang Song-thaek group committed such anti-party, counter-revolutionary factional acts as gnawing at the unity and cohesion of the party and disturbing the work for establishing the party unitary leadership system and perpetrated such anti-state, unpopular crimes.
The most notable parts in North Korea's report of Jang Song-thaek's removal are the expressions the Jang Song-thaek group and anti-party counter-revolutionary factional acts. They hint at more purging to come. Possible candidates topping the list to follow in Jang's footsteps are Ji Jae-ryong, North Korean ambassador to China, Choi Bu-il, Minister of People Security, Ro Du-chul, Vice Prime Minister, and Lee Jong-mu, Minister of Physical Culture and Sports. Considering that around 3,000 people who were close to former Secretary of the Workers' Party Hwang Jang-yeop were executed or imprisoned when he defected to the south, experts say more than 10,000 people may be at risk this time around.
There are departments that have been with Jang for his lifetime. Various departments within the party like the International Department, as well as the institutions in charge of collecting foreign currency within the cabinet, will be the second target.
Also gone is the possibility of Jang's comeback among North Korea's ruling elite. Experts expect the young North Korean leader will speed up the process for solidifying his power as the one and only ruler of the regime.
By expelling Jang from all his posts, it looks like North Korea will no longer allow a second in command and strengthen the power of Kim Jong-un's own inner circle.
However, experts also note a possible uprising by Jang's forces who may feel threatened by their uncertain fate. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Elderly American man who returned home last weekend after spending 42 days detained in North Korea says his curiosity and the innocent questions he asked during his trip there were misinterpreted by North Koreans. 85-year-old Korean war veteran Merrill Newman says he asked to visit the Mount Kuwol area where many of the soldiers he used to train were based during the Korean War. He said the North Koreans grew angry when he asked whether the soldiers who fought in that area might still be alive, and if yes, could he meet them. He also expressed hope for the release of Kenneth Bae, another American detainee who is still in North Korea. The South Korean military plans to build 3 more Aegis destroyers to better deter North Korean threats and enhance its defense capability against rising tensions in Northeast Asia. Officials are expected to give the plan their final approval this afternoon during a joint Chiefs of Staff meeting presided over by Chairman Choi Yoon-hee. Some $3.8 billion will be spent, adding 3 more destroyers, which will be deployed by mid-2020. Korea will then possess 6 destroyers in total, making it possible for the Navy to form a separate fleet exclusively for the Dokdo-Yeodo area. The Dokdo Islets are controlled by Korea but claimed by Japan, while Yeodo Reef lies in the air zones of Korea, China, and Japan. President Park Geun-hye has slammed recent comments made by opposition party lawmakers, saying drastic remarks that go so far as to spark conflict are just aimed at creating political strife and not for the country nor the public. In a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Park expressed her regret over the current political impasse, saying lawmakers are caught in disputes when they need to focus on the people's livelihoods instead. The president emphasized that it is the duty and obligation of the government to protect the people's safety and democracy, especially at a time when North Korea is carrying out a reign of terror to solidify the leadership of Kim Jong-un, which could disturb inter-Korean relations further. Korea's parliament continues to be embroiled in a series of contentious issues as the National Assembly goes into its last day of the annual regular session on this Tuesday. Lawmakers will attempt to put their differences aside for the day to pass some livelihood-related bills this afternoon. And Park Ji-won has more.
Tuesday's session will be the last plenary meeting of the annual regular session at the National Assembly. Out of the Assembly's 100-day regular session schedule, starting at the beginning of September, the Parliament has wasted 99 days without passing a single bill. The two camps' confrontations on major political issues, like the spy agency's alleged meddling in last year's presidential election, have left Parliament deadlocked for months. To avoid the dubious honor of being the least productive regular session ever, lawmakers plan to pass some 20 bills that they generally both agree upon during Tuesday's session. The remaining bills will be dealt with at provisional sessions starting Wednesday. Meanwhile, a special parliamentary committee set up to reform the nation's spy agency, which was supposed to get underway Tuesday morning, has been postponed indefinitely. The ruling Saenuri Party called off the committee meeting early Tuesday, and the main opposition Democratic Party accepted the cancellation. The cancellation is down to controversial remarks by 2 Democratic Party lawmakers against President Park Geun-hye that sparked outrage from the ruling Saenuri Party. DP lawmaker Jang Ha-na, referring the spy agency's meddling scandal, called last year's presidential election a fraud and demanded President Park Geun-hye step down and call fresh elections. Another DP lawmaker, Yang Seung-jo, said on Monday that President Park could follow the fate of her father, the assassinated late President Park Chung-hee, if she refuses to listen to the people. Denouncing the remarks, the Saenuri Party plans to file a motion to expel the 2 members from parliament. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
2 bills aimed at boosting the nation's real estate market are expected to win approval in the National Assembly later today. The bills will lower the acquisition tax for prospective homeowners. Under the bills, people buying property priced at more than $855,000 will only have to pay a 3% acquisition tax, a decrease of 1 percentage point. Revitalizing the nation's faltering housing market has been a major focus for economic policymakers over the years, as 70% of the assets held by Korean households are in real estate. Another bill that aims to allow the redevelopment of old houses and apartment buildings will be submitted to the National Assembly next week. As unionized railway workers go into their second day of an indefinite walkout, board members of the state-run railway operator have defied strikers' calls and approved the establishment of a new affiliate firm of Korail. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Members of Korea Railway's board meeting have approved the setting up a subsidiary firm to operate KTX trains connecting southern Seoul to the central and southern provinces of Chungcheongdo and Jeollado by 2016. Union members of Korail staged protests outside the Korail building as the board meeting was being held. More than 4,300 railway union workers were removed from their posts on Monday for going on strike to prevent what they think is a move to privatize the nation's railway corporation, Korail. In response to the strike, Korail has asked the police to investigate illegal labor actions and the obstruction of working environments. Unionized workers say Korail's KTX plans could result in mass layoffs and fare hikes, but the company denies the claim, saying the new unit will be 41% and 59% owned by Korail and state-run investors, respectively, and that private firms will never be allowed to buy stakes in it. The government says the union's argument holds no ground and blamed the union workers for escalating a labor dispute that has disrupted some train services. However, public inconvenience is expected to worsen as the labor union for Seoul subway lines 1 through 4 has vowed to go on strike next Wednesday to join the rail workers' move and to lodge complaints over failed negotiations with the management about their treatment. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The government says the Korean economy is steadily recovering. In its most recent assessment of the economy, the finance ministry said on Tuesday that more people are getting jobs, prices are stable, and companies are spending more to build factories. Facilities investment logged a growth of almost 20% in October, while retail sales at department and discount stores rose almost 6% in November after a slight fall in the previous month thanks to strong demand for winter clothes. But the ministry said the private sector needs to invest more, and the US Federal Reserve's plan to cut its stimulus program could hurt the Korean economy's recovery. The number of outbound tourists in Korea is expected to far surpass the number recorded last year, especially as more people are choosing to visit Japan, where the local currency has been on the decline recently. But the strong Korean won has in turn sent Japanese tourists away from Korea. Our Yulian reports.
With the Korean won hovering at an over 2-year high, the number of outbound tourists this year is expected to leap past the figure recorded last year. The local currency stood at 1,053 won against the dollar at the end of the trading day on Monday. The weakening Japanese yen has made Japan an especially attractive tourist destination for Korean travelers. And according to Hana Tour, the country's biggest travel company, the number of hotel reservations made by Koreans in Japan has jumped by over 80% since 2 years ago. On the flip side, the number of Japanese tourists who now find it more expensive to visit Korea due to the strength of the won shrank by nearly a quarter in the January to October period compared to a year earlier. It's not only the tourism industry that's feeling the pinch of the strengthening won. Korea's exporters, which make up half of the country's GDP, have seen their goods lose competitiveness overseas compared to their Japanese counterparts. The head of the Korea International Trade Association, Han Deok-soo, has said if the Japanese yen continues to fall and if Japanese exporters are successful at aggressively marketing their products, it will decimate Korea's export industry in the year ahead. The government had expected that Korea's exports would drop by 1.9% every time the won-yen exchange rate fell by 10%. Yurian, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Choi Yu-sun and Mark Broome every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Ukrainian police have begun dismantling barricades and protest camps in Kiev as Tuesday deadline to clear the streets nears expiration. The protests, however, have continued undeterred even after President Viktor Yanukovych agreed to a proposal for talks with the opposition. Kim Min-ji has the latest.
Ukrainian police on Monday began removing barricades and protest camps in front of government buildings in Kiev as anti-government protests continue to cripple the nation. Protesters held their ground as police took up positions and pushed protesters back after authorities issued a deadline of Tuesday to clear the streets. Masked men with guns also broke into the party headquarters of jailed opposition leader Yulia Tymoshenko Monday. No major clashes were reported, but thousands of protesters remain on the streets of Kiev and continue to gather at Independence Square. The police action follows a surprise announcement by Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovich, supporting talks with the opposition to find a compromise. In a statement Monday, Yanukovych said that he supported a proposal by former President Leonid Kravchuk to hold talks with the government and the opposition slated for Tuesday. The demonstrators are calling for Yanukovych and his cabinet to step down over his last-minute decision to suspend plans to sign an integration pact with the European Union and forge closer ties with Russia. In the largest demonstrations yet, hundreds of thousands gathered in Kiev on Sunday for the protest, dubbed the March of the Million. In a highly symbolic development, protesters knocked down a statue of Soviet state founder Vladimir Lenin and attacked it with hammers. Meanwhile, EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton will be in Ukraine on Tuesday and Wednesday to seek ways to defuse the crisis. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In a move to tighten his grip over Russian media, President Vladimir Putin has dissolved the country's main news agency and replaced it with a new agency headed by a prominent pro-Putin figure. In a presidential decree Monday, Putin ordered RIA Novosti be liquidated to form an organization that will promote Moscow's image abroad. The newly established agency, Russia Today, will be headed by Dmitry Kiselyov, a news anchor who made headlines when he said gay people should be banned from giving blood and donating organs. Russia watchers noted that RIA Novosti had made the greatest efforts to produce reasonably balanced coverage in recent years. Iran is threatening to walk away from the interim nuclear deal it reached with world powers if the U.S. Congress imposes new sanctions on it. In an interview with Time magazine, which was posted online on Monday, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the entire deal reached in Geneva late last month would be dead. He added that if Congress adopts sanctions, it shows Washington's lack of seriousness and a desire to achieve a resolution. Despite strong opposition from the White House, senators are close to agreeing on legislation that would target Iran's remaining oil exports, foreign exchange reserves, and strategic industries if Iran violates the terms of the interim deal. Under the November 24th agreement, Tehran agreed to curb its nuclear program in exchange for limited relief from economic sanctions.
The world's largest airline was created on Monday through a merger of American Airlines and US Airways. The new airline, which will go under the name American Airlines, will provide nearly 6,700 daily flights to around 330 destinations in more than 50 countries, with more than 100,000 employees. CEO Doug Parker, formerly the head of US Airways, says the new American Airlines will target more corporate customers through its broad global network. Company officials said they expect the merger to save the new airline more than $1 billion. The deal was sealed after a settlement with the US Justice Department, which blocked the plan, citing concerns about competition in the airline industry. The world will pay homage to Nelson Mandela in a mass memorial service in Johannesburg later on this Tuesday. Tens of thousands of people are expected to attend, including some of the world's most powerful figures. Shin Se-min reports.
Mourners from South Africa and around the world will gather in Johannesburg on Tuesday for a public memorial service for late South African president and anti-apartheid hero Nelson Mandela. South Africa has hosted huge international events before, but it never had to arrange anything of this scale in such a short amount of time. The South African government has tightened security across the city, and roads have been closed around the First National Bank Stadium, the location of Mandela's first speech after his release from prison. Over 90 current and former world leaders and dignitaries will be present for the service. Those confirmed include U.S. President Barack Obama and Mrs. Obama, former U.S. President George W. Bush, Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, UN Secretary General Pan Ki-moon, as well as 13 heads of African states. The Korean delegation will be led by Prime Minister Chung Hong-won. President Obama will speak at the ceremony, where he is expected to recall what Mandela meant to him and to South Africa and the world. Thousands of journalists from around the world are also attending what will be one of the largest funerals in the history of South Africa. Following the Tuesday's memorial, Mandela's body will lie in state in Pretoria for 3 days for citizens to pay their respects. Nelson Mandela will be buried on Sunday in Mandela's ancestral village of Cuneo in the Eastern Cape. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, the smog in Korea reached its peak over the last couple of days. It's okay now, though, of course, and as we all know, it harms your health. But now there's a new study that shows that fine dust particles in pollution could have much more serious consequences than we originally thought. Connie Lee reports.
The hazy skies and the choking smog we've been seeing in Korea these days could also cut years off your life. This is according to a study by Utrecht University in the Netherlands. The study, published in the medical journal The Lancet, showed that people with long-term exposure to fine dust particles from pollution run a higher risk of premature death. The greatest concern is the particles measuring under 2.5 microns, or PM2.5, found in the toxic air pollution. The scientists found that with every 5 micrograms of PM2.5 per cubic meter, the risk of dying rises 7%. The EU guideline for the maximum exposure of PM2.5 stands at 25 micrograms per cubic meter. That's nearly double the level set by the World Health Organization, which is at 10 micrograms per cubic meter. But the level in Korea is the most lenient, at 50 micrograms per cubic meter. The studies show that areas with pollution levels lower than the EU guideline still had a higher than normal number of cases of premature death.
The recent study shows that even with the level set by the WHO and the EU, fine dust particles are very harmful to health. When Korea renews its guidelines in 2015, I believe there is a need to toughen up its standards.
The study comes amid new reports that Korea's budget to fight air pollution is set to increase by 7 times in 2014. The Environment and Labor Committee of the National Assembly decided to raise the budget from 1.7 billion won, or about $1.6 million, to $11 million next year. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, it's much brighter today, isn't it? But there's still obviously a chill in the air. It is December after all. Let's see what the weather is like for the rest of the day by checking in with our Lee Ji-hyun, who's standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-hyun.
Well, good afternoon, Mark and News. And well, yes, it's colder today, and I'd like to share another tip to stay warm. Now, the experts say that eating ginger will help to raise body temperature. So having a cup of ginger tea could help to prevent or fight a cold while also boosting immune system. Simply thinly slice 1 cup of peeled ginger and mix it with a cup of honey or sugar. Then put the concoction in a glass jar, store it in the fridge, then enjoy. Well, today should be a perfect day to have a cup of hot ginger tea. The cold snap has returned, and after the mild stretch we had last week, it feels like we have a sub-zero temperatures even in the daytime. But we will have increasing sunshine across the nation today, though it will be quite windy, so be sure to dress warmly. Now, it will be a lot colder tomorrow, so you will want to dress even more layers to keep out the cold, and many of us will be waking up to a bit of snow tomorrow morning, although the roads will generally be more wet than anything else. And it looks like the colder air will be in place for the rest of the week, and it will get chillier as we head into the weekend. But now here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will peak to 4, while Daegu and Gwangju will get up to 8, and Busan will see a high of 10 under lots of sunshine. 9. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will only get up to 9 in the afternoon. Daejeon will top out at 7 and Dokdo will see a high of 4, while Mount Kumgang stays on the minus side all day long. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
And that's it for this Tuesday edition of Newsline at Noon. Join us again tomorrow for headlines making news in Korea and around the world.
Don't change that channel. We'll have more news coming your way in the afternoon.